Thanks, folks. I am Danielle Credit Cobb, founder of Google's Empathy Lab, and I am standing on the slopes of Haleakala in Ko Hawaii Pai'aina, the land of the Kanaka Oiwi. And I'm here today to share some thoughts and some lessons from Empathy Lab, where we look to our deep humanity, social, and emotional resilience, and the wisdom of nature and interdependence to inform Google's most advanced technologies, like AI. We ask big questions and use unconventional methods. We take the spirit of the 2004 Google Founders Letter seriously, where Larry and Sergey wrote, "We are not a conventional company and we do not intend to become one." So we work with unconventional partners to bring the outside in through pioneering collaborations with scientists, artists, mystics, and poets like Brené Brown or NASA's Jet Propulsion Lab or the spiritual teacher Ram Dass. And the work is always this balance between what changes really rapidly and what changes incredibly slowly, sort of like this awkward dance between Elon Musk and Jane Goodall. The questions of what is timeless, like our human neurobiology, the wiring that defines us as a species of loving, cooperating, teaching, and learning beings, this enduring human inquiry of what is it to be human? Who are we to ourselves and to each other? And really the reason Empathy Lab exists is things have changed. We are no longer in tech designing products, we're designing presences. It's not about how it works, it's more about how it feels. The cognitive and kind of behavioral tropes of the past need to be deeply integrated with the social and emotional needs of the present. Really moving from what was transactional and kind of engagement-y to something that's more deeply relational. And the old approaches are just insufficient now. We need to widen our aperture of understanding and deepen our own work. And so we call this shift one from design thinking to design feeling. And really it's moving from thinking that people have a problem or are a problem to fix to seeing their wholeness and their resilience and their growth. It's moving from quick insights to deeper human truths and maps of consciousness. Moving from objective learning kind of from the outside where it's comfortable to connected learning from the inside where we have our own work, the inner work on ourselves and with each other. It's not just the work. And you're cultivating these kind of inner skills as part of this work because design work at its best can be an act of social healing and an act of service. Ram Dass says it can take us like any good work, from role to soul. And Stephen Levine says, the way to think about this is it's the Braille method. You feel your way through it. So here are some lessons to light our path. The first is a profound lesson from my spiritual friend and teacher, Ram Dass. And I hope you enjoy this video that we made together.
I think that the spiritual trip at this moment is not necessarily a cave in the Himalayas, but it's in relation to the technology that's existing. It's relation to where we're at. It's in relation to issues like pollution and political interests and activism and stuff like that. I think that's all part of one package now. The game is to be where you are, be it honestly and as consciously as you know how.
I don't know about you, but I've been sort of wondering what's happening these days. What is this moment about? Some people feel there is a sense of change in the air. I guess it depends on where you're looking at it from. We are functioning still under the myth that the rational mind is more user-friendly than the intuitive heart-mind. We got so enamored of the power of our analytic mind because look, we can go to the moon. We've cracked the genetic code. Our astronomers now can look back to the beginning of time. Our technology is so advanced it makes Star Trek obsolete. We're suddenly all privy to everything.
We live very much in our minds. One of the powers you and I have is the power of this intellect. is it turns out that the intellect is only one way of knowing the world.
There's this other part of you related to the heart, which has no boundary to it.
It doesn't know the universe through objective means. It doesn't know the universe dualistically. It doesn't know the universe about thinking about something. It is one with it. But it isn't as if we have to choose one versus the other. We've got both of them. We are at wise person training.
Science and its products must be tempered with wisdom. It is not a substitute for wisdom. This moment has in it the fear, the possibility, the end, the beginning. It has the sadness, the hope, the hopelessness. And if you're afraid of change, you are going to be part of the problem. And if you can say, here we go, you could be part of the solution. What could it possibly mean to transform the world? Transformation doesn't begin with an institution. We don't organize to transform the universe. We start with the individual human heart. It takes only one heart to start the whole chain.
Be here. The lesson in this incarnation is to love. To love.
Heart to heart to heart. This makes me wonder, how do we turn down the mind radio so we can listen to our hearts as we attend to the future? And this is a lesson from Robin Wall Kimmerer in Social Being. I have been spellbound by her work recently, her poetry of ecology and conservation, and I'd love to share a chapter from her book, Braiding Sweetgrass, called The Council of Pecans. So she says in it, if one tree fruits, they all fruit. There are no soloists, not one tree in a grove, but the whole grove, not one grove in a forest, but every grove all across the county and all across the state. What happens to one happens to all flourishing is mutual. This is both poetry and evolutionary biology, cooperation for the greatest survival and strength of the species. Beautifully, togetherness is wired inside of us. And Robin shares that her wise elders used to say, the trees talk to each other. They'd stand in their own council and craft a plan. You know, science pretends to be this purely rational, completely neutral system of knowledge making where the observation is independent from the observer. But we know better, you know, and what's funny is until recently, nobody seriously explored or believed that plants might speak to each other, but it's true. There's evidence that they communicate in so many languages, with pheromones wafted on the breeze, with electric signals passed through helper fungi on the strands of their roots. As Suzanne Simard says, the wood wide web. They share extra carbon from the strong trees to the weak. In this way, the trees, like us, are all one. Through unity survival, all flourishing is mutual. Robin tells a story of her grandfather who said he was raised by the rivers because of the lessons they taught him about how to live in this world. She says she was raised by strawberries as a young girl. Seeing their tendrils reach for fertile ground, she cleared their path of weeds. This isn't just poetry, this is social learning. Or it is both poetry and social learning, which, you know, we really learn our lessons in this life from the voices that we tune into and that we listen to, which makes me wonder, can technology help us listen? And another lesson from my dear friend, Dr. Dacher Keltner, on awe. Dacher defines awe as the animating spirit that moves us to feel and understand the vast mysteries and the forces that shape our lives. We melt into union in this space. We feel like we belong to something bigger than ourselves. It gives us a rush of opening. It moves us to connect and explore. It moves us to care. And it brings with it feelings of curiosity and wonder and hope And he has a book coming out on awe this spring, but I'll give you a little glimpse. First, awe is transformative. It heals, even more than gratitude, which has gotten so much attention. Awe reduces stress, inflammation, it calms our nervous systems. It is an antidote that lies inside of us. Awe rises out of the 8 wonders of life: moral beauty, moving in unison like dance or games, nature, music, art, spirituality, big ideas, and the circle of life and death. If you know where to find it, this is the most exciting part of this for me. If you know where to find it, which we do, you know how to practice it. It is a renewable inner source of energy, just waiting to be tapped. And last, Keltner's research shows us that many people experience awe 2 to 3 times a week. This is not scarce. This is not reserved for Kilimanjaro and the birth of a first child. This can be a practice. Awe is a muscle. So all of this makes me wonder, can technology enable more awe in this world for us who live with it everywhere? Lessons like these inform Empathy Lab's approach to research and design. As a researcher, I am a lover of truth, not in the form of an answer, but as wayfinding, as a sensitivity, as an awareness, as a new lens for inquiry. So that's why for us, sometimes we have to invent research methods to get to the heart of something. You know, you start with a hard question, and then the next question is, how do we get inside of this? How do we move towards a deeper, more expansive truth? Who do we talk to? And when we find the people that can source this space, how do we do that? So I find that creativity does that, curiosity does that, music does this, art does this. So we use alternative methods of research: drawing, relationships, art, journalism, magic, documentary, activism. These are all doorways to human truth. And these drawings you're looking at right now are from a project, a conversation about AI across a year with Jeff McFetridge, the artist. And what we wanted to do is feel into these new spaces of interbeing. And we talked and he drew. And these methods reveal things that words can't always touch, but must be explored. And the exciting thing is these new lenses also yield new science and new stories for being. So I work at Google, an engineering company, and I work in the AI group. So let me get crunchy sciencey here. The most powerful example we did recently is some work on stress. Stress, mindfulness, well-being, all of these are now clearly topics of the moment. And we actually did this before COVID. And what we wanted to do was really ask the hard questions of the space. We didn't just want to make another piece of technology to throw on the pile of good intentions that end up in a drawer. So we wanted to change this stat. 90% of our young people are stressed out all the time. I spoke to them and I spent time with them in their lives and in their homes, and they said, I feel like I'm always on. I feel like I am never enough. And I feel like I'm alone. And I was like, this is not just young people, so say we all. And, you know, I'll raise my hand to that. But then we look at COVID on top of this, and anxiety is up 300%. So the question is, what can we do? I believe, and Empathy Lab believes, that the big advances are in the depth of our human understanding and our consciousness. That's what can inspire a new wave of courageous, compassionate, and enlivening technology. This is pioneering science in service of the human spirit. So for this, for stress, we started at the origin point, which really is our beliefs. There's a field of behavioral science called mindset. Carol Dweck founded it at Stanford, and incredible leaps are being made as we speak. What's so cool about this is not 70-year-old science. This is decades old, but there are huge leaps being made as we speak. We are in step with it. And so we hunted down these genius scientists at UT Austin and at Stanford, David Yeager and Chris Bryan, my dear colleagues, who work with Carol Dweck, and said, you know, how can we get this right based on the biggest recent breakthroughs? And what was so cool is they brilliantly connected some dots, and we ended up developing a new model for how we understand and respond to stress. Mindsets are our beliefs about how the world works. They shape how we feel and how we respond to everything around us. So growth mindset is when you believe that your talents can be developed through hard work, good strategies, and input for others. Basically, trying and learning. Fixed mindset, in contrast, is when you believe that what you're born with is what you got, and you were either born smart or talented or not. And so with stress, there are mindsets too. And with stress simply, the definition is when the demands upon us are greater than our resources. And that feels like either a challenge, a chance to rise, or a threat, a chance to curl up on the ground. And these are our beliefs about how the world works. So when a stressful thing happens, that's actually not necessarily good or bad. And this was a new aha for me, because what I realized is that it's the story that we tell ourselves that is how our body determines our stress response. This is mindset in action. How crazy is that? Our body physically responds to our internal narrative of what's happening. And this is powerful because you can't necessarily control your cortisol, but you can control the story that you tell yourself. So this is the bedrock of stress resilience. And, this is important because the answer isn't like avoid stress. If you're pushing yourself, if you're living your life, if you're out in the world, you should be feeling stress. It's our body's way of kicking into gear. And the goal isn't to stay Prozac flat. It's to be bouncy, to be able to flex and flow with the dance of life. So the answer isn't going to be just breath work or yoga or a pill or staying in your comfort zone. Our bodies live our beliefs. So how do we embrace stress? By changing our stories from stress is debilitating, like, uh-oh, this is my body telling me to give up, where anxiety goes up, bad feelings go up, and motivation tanks. How do we move that to stress is enhancing, like, let's go, my body is ready to perform, anxiety chills out, good feelings go up, and we're ready to rock. So what's incredible to me in working with these scientists is that the simple game changer was a 30-minute intervention explaining the new science of stress. And the part that changed everything was a line that said this: the part that feels the worst is when you're growing the most new neural connections. And what's beautiful about that is it says the reason that it feels this way is because the good thing is happening. And our study was with the most under-resourced groups of teens. We went to them on purpose because we wanted to serve a community that really needed this work, not just someone who could afford the latest device. And so we went to these teens in Rochester, New York, a community of 99% Black and Latinx young people, 99% below the poverty line. And this was right before COVID and the first semester back. And what we saw was profound. Anxiety dropped, depression dropped, more kids were passing their classes, and grades went up. This is science that can change lives because it is driven by the heart. This is the kind of stuff we want and we need, frankly, in our R&D pipelines. So we take a step back, we take all these lessons and the promise of new science, and we return to technology now. So here's a question I'm curious about at the moment. Come with me. Great minds are asking what AI can do for our planet, for equity, for connection and resilience. And there's a concept of artificial general intelligence as a goal for AI. But how about dreaming into this with me for a moment? Artificial general emotional intelligence. Let's remember our lessons of intuition, awe, the powers of the stories that we tell ourselves. Let's remember the pecans. Let's remember the strawberries. After all, AI is the stuff of nature too. We think of it as this alien thing, but it rises from the sand. It is the same material as the oldest mountains and our mirrors. It's made of the same stuff as stars, just like us. So what if we could leap past this technological adolescence with it, the awkward braces phase of devices, and intentionally shape technology with the language of our inborn senses? It doesn't have to look and smell like technology. It could be born of nature, our mother tongue. AI can crunch data, sure. It can monitor and optimize and automate and replicate. And its ability to read signals is where I think it gets really interesting. These data streams, couldn't they be material for creating new senses? Could it mean that we can make AI not only to be a brain, but a loving ear, sensitive and aware, this great translator, turning the invisible to the visible, going beyond a sixth sense to a 60th sense for all the voices not yet heard, in a language we can now finally understand, that can be heard and felt, allowing us to tune in, to hear the subtle voices of ourselves and of this earth. Imagine we could listen to the pecan trees talking to one another. We could listen to the strawberries finding their path. We could listen to the moon playing with the earth through the tides, to the harmonies of interstellar space, to what Saturn says to its rings as it moves around the solar system, or even to our humble microbiome, the inner space, and not just there, but the inner space of our hearts. We could feel the awe of moving in unison with each other and the forces of nature in entirely new ways. So my big question right now is, how can our most advanced technologies align with our deepest indigenous wisdom? This stuff is not new, it's ancient. We can just know it in a new way. Everything is just information waiting to be attuned to. What makes us most human is our ability to listen, understand, and learn. And what connects us is our ability to attune to and internalize things beyond ourselves. Synchrony and listening are quite literally the birthplace of empathy. So what have we been receiving all this time that we haven't yet heard, that maybe now we're ready to hear and learn from? I hope that my daughter can say that she was raised by avocados in Wales in this great land because we learned to listen. Thank you for listening. And Rebecca and Alistair, back to you, my dear friends. Thank you for this time.